Welcome back to the Business Simple podcast. This is our Journeys segment, which is really exciting. We have a fantastic guest, Brett O'Donnell, who's joined us. This is one that I'm really excited for. Brett has built and sold businesses in the tech space. I'm interested in building businesses and I'm interested in selling businesses. So I'm pumped. I also don't have a huge amount of insight into your story. So I'm really excited to hear this. Thank you for coming. I appreciate it.
Thanks for having me, mate. Appreciate it.
Absolute pleasure. Absolute pleasure. So as with our theme, we kind of aim to keep this, or the objective of this podcast, I suppose, especially when it comes to our journey segments and where we're bringing in guests, is just to really, I suppose the word I'd use is like humanize people that do things. I know you wouldn't describe what you've done as extraordinary by any stretch because
Absolutely
I know,
not.
Yeah, but there will be a lot of people who will be looking at you and thinking, man, that's pretty crazy and pretty cool what this guy's done. My goal, I suppose, with this is just to show people that this stuff is possible, right? And if someone is a aspiring business owner that hasn't started, giving them the maybe a little bit of enablement to start. If someone has a business and they're a little bit conscious of how big they are, if they don't want to grow, if they're showing them that this stuff is possible, if it's what they want. That's sort of my main objective here. And just to hear your story, because I feel like it'll be quite a cool one. So just for starters, could you give me a little bit of an overview of you, what you've done, those sorts of things?
Mate, it's a great question. I don't know where to start, actually. Grew up in Hawke's Bay on a farm. 3 little brothers. Used to beat each other up and steal each other's stuff, and Mum would kick us out of the house, and it was great. I really enjoyed it. Great school, great mates. Got to about 7th form and thought, actually, I need to change. I need to go as far away from here as possible. I need to throw myself in the deep end. So I came down to Christchurch to go to university. I thought, actually, I might give this engineering a wee nudge. And as I say, failed my first year philosophy paper. Didn't have enough points to get through in the second year and sort of scratched my head a bit and thought, oh God, what am I going to do? Ended up sticking around for another couple of years and did a physics degree.
Yeah, right.
So Bachelor of Science in Physics, and I thought, woohoo, happy days, graduated, what next? And I thought, started applying for a few jobs, started having a look around, got offered a job as a physics teacher or at Met Service. And I was thinking, none of those really float my boat. And it was about that time that I met my now wife at university. So she was just starting. And I thought, I'm going to stick around for another couple of years. So I ended up going back for another couple of years, did a bit of rowing, and ended up with a commerce degree, economics. Yeah, cool. Nice. So, and as you do, sort of 5 years, university, rack up a bit of a student loan. I had a bit of a landscaping and a renovation business at that point, and I was sort of pimping out my mates and all my rowing crew guys, and we were going running around Christchurch renovating houses and building fences and decks and painting stuff that we probably shouldn't have been painting, but it was great. So managed to get through university relatively unscathed, and ended up at BP on the graduate program.
Cool.
With them.
Nice. And so probably 2 questions that jump up straight away with that are, A, what are your thoughts on someone that is young now and deciding whether to go to university or not? I didn't even finish high school. I have no, but I definitely don't disagree with the concept of education. How did you find it? Did you gain things from it? You obviously mentioned that student loan. Do you think it was worth it?
That's a really good question, mate. Apart from the student loan, the next biggest, there's probably a couple of things that you get out of university. One, you get credibility, right? So you rock up to a job interview and you get a couple of letters after your name, right? So that gets you in the door. Often that's enough to then you take over and if you have to convince them, or if you're in a job interview. The second thing you get out of university is good connections. Yeah. And so I'm still great mates with a lot of the guys that I went to university with, right?
Yeah, cool.
And through those connections, you separate, you go your ways, and you get married, and every year or two you'll catch up again. Those connections are really important, I think, for when you are building a business and developing a business. Just to jump on a phone to someone and say, look, am I out to lunch? I've got an idea. You're in the industry. What would you do?
Yeah.
And I think having that really big network when you first start out is fantastic. And it's a network of professionals, of people that, are all on the same page. You spend a lot of time together, you've been in the pub, had a few beers. And I think those networks are really valuable.
Yeah, cool. That's good insight. Second thing that popped up straight away when you mentioned that start bit is, so obviously there was some sort of entrepreneurial spirit there all along if you were renovating and painting and doing that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I'm a bit of a magpie. I like shiny things. Which is cool. And I always look for opportunities. I always enjoy chatting to people and just understanding some of the challenges they're having, perhaps in some of the roles that they've got, or in some of the businesses that they have. And I'm straight to solution mode, right? So this is what I do. And this all started out. It was actually next door neighbour. So we were renting this house off this guy. He subdivided our section and he built this house on the back section. And I went up to him one day and I said, mate, who's painting your house? And he's like, I haven't even got that far yet. I said, do you mind if I give it a crack? And he's like, yeah, go on then. Yeah. So, a week later, me and 3 mates were around there painting this guy's house. He just built it, brand new house, and he's like, gee, he did a bloody good job. Turned out he was quite a big property owner around Christchurch, right?
Yeah,
and I didn't realise this. And he goes, oh, mate, I've got about 20 other properties. Do you mind going around and painting them as well? And I was like, so next thing, one thing led to another.
Yeah.
And so you're right, that entrepreneurial spirit, I think it's I always like to say behind every success is about 12 failures.
Yeah.
And so there were certainly a lot of failures along the way, but it's about getting out, giving it a crack, and then knowing when to stop. Yeah, I think that's the most important thing. And I knew at that point that I didn't want to be building fences and painting houses for the rest of my life. So I thought, right, okay, time for a proper job.
Something that I think about a lot, and this aligns with what you just said, is that being like people who get lucky are out there. And so it's that, you just go say to the person, hey, can I paint your house? And it turns out they own all of these houses. Without that being out there, you not only wouldn't have got the initial opportunity or any of the other opportunities that would have come along with it. And that's a big thing, I think, for people. People get stuck in this perfect product, almost anxiety, where they don't act because they're so worried about what paint they'll use 100%. Or who will do the painting job. If you just go talk to the guy and they're keen for you to do something, that's the start, right? Not the
exactly cool. Right. Luck favours the bold, and it is important. My kids give me a hard time about it all the time. Whenever we go out to a social event, or even if we're just in public, I'll just rock up and start chatting to someone, right? And and the kids are like, Dad, you're so embarrassing. And I'm like, well, he's a really nice guy, and I met him, and he's got, he's like, I'll just start talking to people. Yeah. And 10% of the time they might go, you might get a reaction that it's like, who's this guy? It's like, that's fine. Yeah, no worries, mate. 90% of the time, you actually have a really great conversation with somebody. Yeah. And you're not looking for opportunities. You're not trying to sell something to someone. You're just having a discussion. Because most people are in the same boat. They might be sitting around. They might be standing in a queue. I'll be standing in a queue in a supermarket, and I'll just turn around and start talking to the person behind me. Right? I don't know anything about them. Yeah. And it's great. And by the time we get up to the front, we're like, oh, see you, mate. Yeah, see you next time. Yeah. And we're all good. So yeah. Are
you white? Like, have you always been like that? Because I'm the opposite, just for reference. Like I'm learning to be more outgoing. I'd use the word over time, but my natural state is like, I do not want to talk to like this sort of thing, like one-to-one, the dinners, like when you've got sort of 4 people or whatever. I enjoy that if there's some sort of connection there and there's mutual interest. I find the concept of just talking to strangers quite challenging.
One of the best challenges that I got is actually a guy at university, and I'll really, really brief story. It was orientation week at university. We just had the toga party, and I got back home after the toga party, I reckon at about midnight, right? And this is in the halls of residence at university. Went into bed, and I thought, I had enough, had a couple of beers, it was great time, it was all cool. Knock at the door, and it was one of my mates from the toga party. He's like, Brett, we're going out. And I'm like, where are we going? And he's like, I don't know, we're going out, we're doing it. And I was like, oh, mate, just got into bed and stuff. And he said to me, you should always pick the decision that's going to make the best story in the morning. Yeah. And that applies to a whole bunch of stuff, right? And he said, you can go to bed or you can come out with me.
Yeah.
And I'm like, fuck it, that's great. Put my pants back on, straight out the door, had a great night. It was great. I can't remember what happened. It was perfect. Probably ended up in town somewhere. When you're in a supermarket line and you're standing there and you're thinking, I've got a decision to make here. I could either ignore the person behind me or I could chat to them. Which one's going to make the best story? Which one's going to have, the best outcome? Well, it's going to be turning around and having a chat.
Yeah.
So every situation you're in, you think, oh, should I, shouldn't I? You always pick the best, the decision that's going to make the best story.
Yeah.
I could learn something about somebody. I could have a chat. I mean, this could be a new mate.
You just don't know, right?
Well, you don't.
We were joking before this about that. All you take from a podcast is one thing, and that makes it worth it. That's probably mine. I've done a lot of active work on pushing myself to be more outgoing.
Yep.
Like I did door-to-door sales for a year, right? And so there's no way that you can better get used to just talking to strangers.
Hats off to you, mate.
Yeah.
Best job, the one of the hardest jobs you'll ever have. But some of the best salespeople I've ever met have started off selling door to door.
Yeah, and I think there's people will often mention to me like, oh, you must be so extroverted or whatever it is. And I'm like, I hate it, but it's real, like you said, it does create the better story, and it's also more it is better.
Of course
it's a little bit uncomfortable when you first turn around and go, how's it going, or whatever, or you call that person you haven't spoken to before, but the result of it is awesome. That's
Yep. Absolutely. I think a lot of people starting out in business these days, they go along to conferences. They'll be they get invited to a big event, say, maybe a talk or something like that, and often they'll walk in, they'll listen to the talk, and they'll walk back out again. And so me and a business partner, we used to have this game, and we used to call it "Let's Go Make Friends with Strangers." And so we'd go along to a conference, and my business partner, Melissa, she would challenge me every single time we'd go along. She's like, "How many strangers have you made friends with?" And I'm like, "Oh, it's probably up to 4." She's like, "I'm up to 20," and I'm like, "Let's go do it."
Yeah.
And when you're in a situation like that, and you're in a conference or an event, and there are people just standing around, and everyone's in the same boat. Nobody knows anybody, and maybe they just go to the person that they talk. Just bowl up and have a discussion, right? You'll know straight away whether you're welcome or whether you're fitting in. You know what? 5 minutes later, time to go and find another friend, another stranger to go and talk to. And it's really important to challenge yourself on that sort of stuff, because a lot of people, like I said, they rock up to those things, they listen, and then they walk out again. It's like, hey, how many people did you meet? How many business cards did you get? And it's just a challenge. Go say, I'm not leaving here until I have 10 business cards.
Yeah.
Or I have 10 new LinkedIn connections.
Yeah. So, I'm going to take that away myself. That's good. That's really good. So from painting houses to tech business is obviously
big leap there.
Yeah.
Tech business. So I worked for BP for 5 years in New Zealand and then overseas as well, over in London.
Cool.
When I was in London, I sort of started managing a few tech projects.
Yeah.
Working with an outsourced tech provider, software provider in India, and I was managing a team over there. And we were basically rolling out websites and little bits of software for BP. And I really enjoyed it. Got a little bit frustrating. I saw opportunities to do things better. Even something like designing a nice little prototype, getting that in front of a customer rather than waiting for the end of the project, getting the final product in front of them, and what I call the ta-da moment, which is, oh shit, that's not what I wanted.
Yeah. Or can you make these 40 changes now that you've built it? Yeah.
Exactly right.
Yeah.
You're like, oh god, yeah, right. So that is incredibly frustrating. So I guess I really enjoyed I enjoy the creativity side of building something from scratch, and whether that's an app or a piece of software or a website. I'm terrible at design. Like you give me a box of crayons and a piece of paper, and I'll show you a 4-year-old's drawing.
Yeah.
Like I am terrible at, and there are some amazing people out there that are far better at stuff like that than me. So part of the journey is actually working out. This is one of the lessons I've learned, is what you're good at and what you're not good at.
Yeah.
Right? And so a lot of people think that they're great at sales, but they might not be.
Yeah.
So if you're not, go find a salesperson who's
Yeah.
better at it, or learn from one.
Yeah.
Right? Meet somebody and some people think that they're great at running a business and accounting and watching the pennies.
Yeah.
Look, if you get down the road further and you find that you're not, go find an accountant. Go find somebody who's amazing at that, because there are some incredible people out there. And what you've got to work out is that, right, you're forming this jigsaw puzzle. You can do that bit, that bit, that bit, that bit. You're really good at that. Outsource the rest. Find other people to help you along the journey.
Yeah, nice. And that, I mean, I think there's like it's almost like a rite of passage when you first start your own thing, where you kind of have to do some element of everything. And
I totally agree with you.
It makes you better further down the track. Like I'm like you, design, not my thing, not at all. And an important part of running Facebook ads is the image and the design that goes with it. And so starting out with just a Canva account, and you know, I had pretty much the skill level of being able to like drag a coloured circle into the corner and then write some text over it. Now I'm in a far nicer position where I've got 2 full-time designers plus 2 people in content that are super creative and capable. But I'm now able to add like opinion in a different way than I would be if I'd never. And so it's just that, you know, outsourcing when you can, but also cutting your teeth with doing the stuff that, you know, or the bookkeeping, right? Like I sucked at that. Number, you know, that,
but you have to do it to understand your business. I think, and with your example, what you're good at is knowing what good is. And I think that's really important, is that if you've been in a situation where you've had to do some design work, and, you know, you've seen all these different designs and you know what works because, you know, that campaign's produced a better click-through rate than that campaign, then you know what good is. And then so when you outsource that to another person, you can look at that and go, I don't think that's going to work. Or actually what you're doing is fantastic. Let's measure it. Let's make sure that it is. But that's the job of an entrepreneur, is to do every job in the business, outsource what you're not good at, but know what good is.
Yeah, that's put really well. That know what good is thing is, I don't think about it like that, but I agree. I'll look at an image and be like, I don't think that's going to work. And I'm open to being proved wrong. Actually, I'd prefer it. It would be even
brilliant.
Better.
That's what I call learning, right?
But right, cool. And so you started on your own? Or?
Yeah, I did. So after I left BP, I actually ended up doing a bunch of consulting jobs, right? So just contract, project management, business analysis. Again, tech space, which was fantastic. I started to develop, and again, that experience, I knew what good was, and I knew that when we rolled out a piece of software, that whether it was going to work or not, right? Had we done the training? Had we done the prototyping properly? We'd got the engagement sorted out. We thought about, you know, are we 27 clicks to get to an outcome, or are we 3 clicks to get to an outcome? So I started to kind of develop an understanding of what good is in that software space. Never wrote a line of code in my life, right? But again, I know what a good developer is and what they do, and I know what a bad one is. And so sort of got through to about 2007, 2008. Saw an opportunity in the electricity market, right, in the energy space, and that opportunity was, there was one platform, one website provider called the Consumers Institute, what do they call it? Power Switch. Which was an energy comparison website, right? So what you could do is you could go on there, say where you lived, and it would say your best power price is going to be Contact or Meridian or Mercury or one of those ones. But then that was it. They just said, go ring the retailer. You're like, okay, cool. And I sat there and I thought, well, I reckon I could do a better job than that, right? So I found this developer and said, look, I want to build this, basically a calculator. I want to load in all the energy rates in the back end of it. And I want to be able to, anyone to be able to jump in and say, look, I live in Taupo, Rotorua, whatever, and then tell me who my best retailer is. And once I pick that retailer, I then want to be able to sign up to them. Right?
Cool.
And so we've just add another step on. Really simple, right? So I just want to take away all of that hassle of, now I've got to get on the phone and ring this person and I've got to wait in the queue. Actually, I know my first name, my last name, I know where I live, I know a whole bunch of information about myself. I can just accept some terms and conditions and boom, we can then send that off to the retailer. Cool. So back in 2007, we spun up SwitchMe. .co.nz, which is still around today and still be managed by a team up in Hawke's Bay. So I'm 50% owner of that, and that's going incredibly well. Absolutely fantastic. But what it did is it kind of got me into thinking about the energy market, and this kind of this is the very early stages of the Webtools business. And what I realised was that the energy market, particularly pricing, electricity pricing was incredibly complex.
Yeah.
And if you had, typically energy retailers would rely on spreadsheets to kind of manage all of that pricing.
Yeah.
And it's very difficult. And every network has different types of rates and different types of meters. And you know what? You might have an offer for an energy retailer that's just displayed on a billboard. Could be something on the radio station. It could be completely different, right? Different discounts, different terms and conditions. Sometimes you get a TV, sometimes you don't.
We used to, because funnily enough, my door-to-door sales was for Nova Energy, flipping,
right.
swapping people's power.
Well, you know
company.
how complex it can be, right?
Yeah, and because this is played over into Digital Simple, but my whole thing has always been, if you confuse people, you lose them, right?
Absolutely.
And so we used to go around and we'd price compare against, say, Contact, and I'd be Nova, and Contact Energy would have a 22% early payment discount,
Yep.
And Nova had a 10. Right?
Yes, yep.
And so I'd be like, well, our rates are considerably better.
Yes.
But if you don't pay your bill on time, we
Yep.
don't hurt you as much. And people would be like, oh.
I get that.
And
Yeah.
like things like that are
Yeah.
all like you've got the daily rates versus and so whether you're a high or a low user
Correct,
and
yeah.
all this,
Yep.
it is complex. And I remember back in the day seeing like usage rates advertised. And now that I think back about that, that must have just confused the public so much.
Yeah. Yeah, it is. It is incredibly complex. That you imagine if you were a call center person. So the cool thing about being door to door is that you're in a particular region. You know that you're in Christchurch and you're selling to Orion customers.
Yep.
You only need 4 or 5 rates. A day rate, an anytime charge, and a composite charge, and a day night, whatever.
Yep.
Happy days. Now, as a call center worker, you could have anyone from anywhere in New Zealand calling up and going, hey, it's Brett from Invercargill. I've just got a bill from a retailer and I'm really interested in getting your pricing. Can you tell me how much I'm going to save? That is probably a 5 to 10 minute conversation for a consultant to sit there, use a spreadsheet, calculate out, work it all out, and then go, yeah, I reckon I can save you $22. Or, hey, we're $4 more expensive.
Yeah.
And then, click.
Yeah.
Hang up. We're like, that's just taken all this time. So what I realised, there was a huge opportunity to simplify that sales process, right? So we want to make sales calls as quick and efficient as possible. Yep. And that's for a great experience for a consumer who rings up and go, hey, can you tell me how much I'm going to save? Within 2 minutes, I need to be able to give you a number.
Yeah.
Or give you some of the benefits, right? Hey, look, we might be more expensive, but actually we're going to lock in our rates for 2 years.
Yeah.
The company you're with at the moment, you're on a floating rate. That could go up any time. Mm-hmm. How about we give you some certainty? And so having all of those softer benefits as well. And so what we did is, this is the very start of Webtools, we developed a pricing engine for use within energy retailers.
Yeah.
And so it held all the different rates, all the different offers, all the incentives, all the discounts, the terms and conditions. And it basically allowed energy retailers to onboard customers really, really, really quickly and accurately.
Yeah.
And so wind the clock forward 3 years, we'd sold to Meridian, Genesis and Contact, all used our application, and they still do today.
Yeah, cool.
And which was great. So we had LPG offers in there, we had natural gas offers in there, broadband, all of those value adds. But we basically simplified a problem. It was an incredibly complex process, and we made it simple. We made it easy. Credit checking was all done within the system.
Yeah.
And so for energy consumer, it made it an incredibly efficient process, a really, really great process. We create what we call welcome packs out the end of it, which is, hey, welcome to your new retailer, nice logos, nicely formatted, well presented, delivered via email 3 seconds after you get off the call.
Yeah, cool.
And then that was the New Zealand market. We'd we'd knocked on every door about 4 or 5 times and said, hey, you want to buy this?
Yeah.
And then we went to Australia. So that actually, if we can do it here in New Zealand, Australian market is probably 90% similar.
Yeah.
Distributors and the rates and the way things are constructed. So we rebuilt the platform for Australia.
Yeah,
and
cool.
About 3 years later, we'd sold to about a dozen retailers over in Australia. So,
wow.
Just small town New Zealand, large city Australia. We've got 40 odd retailers. They've probably got 140 retailers, right?
Yeah.
And so what we're able to do is solve their problems as well.
Yeah.
Which was and that was the basis of the very first Webtools business.
Cool. And what was your payment model? Were the power companies just paying you per switch? How did that work?
Yeah, really good question. So for the Switch Me model, yep, absolutely, they pay per referral, and that's because we process a lot of the sales over the phone. We're doing a whole bunch of work for the retailer, just saving them a whole lot of time.
Yeah.
The Webtools model, it was a monthly fee.
Yeah,
right?
sure.
And so this is the really important thing when it comes to particularly software businesses, and a lot of people don't get, or they take a while to kind of get it. And that is that you've got two options when you're selling software. One is for me to say, hey James, I'll build you that software, it'll cost you $5,000.
Yeah.
And you go, great, cool, thanks very much. I take some money off you, you get your software, happy days. Maybe we don't talk, maybe we do. Or I say to you, actually James, I'm going to build the software for you. I'm going to license it to you for $500 a month.
Yeah.
Right. So for me, as a software developer, I'm going, shit, do I want $5,000 on day one, or do I want $500 a month? And if I'm starting out, I want $5,000.
Yeah.
I've got mouths to feed. I've got a wife. I've got kids. I've got a mortgage and everything else. That $5,000 is going to come in real super handy.
Yeah.
But actually, what I should be doing is taking the $500 a month.
Yeah.
Because that $500 a month after a year is worth $6,000, and after 2 years is worth another $6,000, right? So I'm making that money every single year.
Yeah.
And I know damn well that if I do a good job and I deliver you an amazing piece of software, that you're going to use it for a really long time.
Yeah.
The other thing it allows me to do is to take some of that money and to build new features into that software.
Yep.
So I'm constantly upgrading it. I'm making it better. I am adding value to your business, and I'm listening to you. You come to me say one day, actually, I wish it did this. I went, actually, yep, I reckon we could do that for you. We might put your license fee up, we might leave it as it is, but at the end of the day, you're getting an evolving piece of software. The other really important thing about that as well is that I get to sell that piece of software to whoever I want.
Yeah.
And this is the cool thing about software, right? You can build it once and you can sell it 1,000,000 times.
Yeah.
Nobody cares whether you've got an extra user on there. It's so scalable, right? So I solve your problem and I say, James, how many people are in your industry? Oh, yeah, there's 1,000 other people in Christchurch doing what I do. Great, that's now my market.
Yep.
I go and knock on 1,000 doors. I solve the same problem that I solved for you, but I own the IP and I charge them $500 a month for it as well.
Yeah, and so now instead of getting $5,000 one-off, you've got $10,000 a month.
Boom.
Yeah.
That's exactly right.
Yeah.
And so it's that short-term pain of I'm only making $500 a month off my first customer versus actually in a year's time, it's a very, very different story. Very
cool.
different model.
Nice. And because I'm obsessed with recurring revenue business.
So important.
Yeah, and I sort of, I suppose at times you know the grass always appears greener on the other side, and I look at some people I'm friends with or some businesses we work with that have super high ticket value, like one sale stuff, and I'm like, you just sold that and made $100,000, and I'm like, that's cool. But you think about what you can build from a reoccurring model, you really have no. Aside from fulfillment, you really have no, and this is where software is cooler than say like we're a service-based business. So we're essentially selling time.
Yep.
And so you run into delivery issues and you're spinning plates in that regard and that sort of thing. But for you guys, it's really, aside from time spent upgrading the product, which will help long-term retention, you're really just able to sell and sell and sell and sell and sell and sell and just keep loading people in.
Yeah. I think I'd challenge you on what you said before around you're selling time. I think what you guys are selling is an outcome, and people may pay good money for an outcome, right? And so I would be happy to pay a monthly recurring fee as long as I got a particular outcome, and that's what I'm paying for. And I'm doing a bit of work in the AI space at the moment, and we have to get away from thinking about swapping time for money, right? As AI is going to have a massive impact on, say, the legal profession, right? So it used to take me 3 days to write a contract, and now I can use AI, feed all my other contracts into it, and get it to produce me a contract based on all of the previous work that I've done in 3 minutes.
Yeah.
Do I still charge for 3 days worth of work? It's still worth that. The value of the contract is still worth 3 days worth of work, but it's only taking me 3 minutes to do it.
Yeah.
So I think in your particular business, you're selling an outcome, which is that I want more sales.
Yep.
I want more eyeballs on my website. I want more people talking about me in the media. That's really, really important, and I'll pay good money for that, and I'll pay a recurring fee for that.
Yeah.
The software game, particularly some of the stuff that we do, I'm solving problems for people by saying, here's a new tool that you can use. Essentially, with the software as a service model, it's here's a tool that I've developed that you can borrow, but you just pay me a monthly fee, and I'll listen to you whenever you have some feedback, and we'll look to upgrade some of those and enhance it along the way.
Yeah, cool. It's it's really clever. It's really clever. And so you get into Webtools. The business that you wound up selling, was that Australia and New Zealand that you sold, or was it?
Yeah, it's a little confusing.
Yeah, I tried to do research before.
Yeah,
by the way. Yeah,
it is. So look, when you start a tech company, you want to be everything to everybody.
Yeah.
Right. And so, on day one, in the first week, if somebody came to you and said, or came to me and said, "Hey, can you build me a website?" We would absolutely build them a website, right? Yeah. And we weren't good at that, right? So we had software developers who were, engineers. We didn't have designers, so we'd have to typically outsource those sorts of that sort of work to somebody who was really good at designing something, and then we would go and build it.
Yeah.
The problem with that is that you say yes to everything because you have to. You've got mouths to feed, you've got mortgages to pay, so you just do it. We're a tech company. We build software, right? But I'd argue, and I'd use a property analogy, that you could use a builder to build a high-rise apartment, or you could use them to build a letterbox. It's the same skills, right?
Yeah.
Fundamentally, and it's the same thing with what we were doing, was that we would have a team of engineers, and we'd be building letterboxes and high-rises, and we would just say yes to everything. And so what that meant is that we were able to focus on the energy stuff, but at the same time, we were opening the door to all sorts of other industries and having all sorts of other discussions. And so what that meant over sort of 3 or 4 years is that we actually worked out other industries where there was an opportunity for us to really come in and do a really good job and solve some problems for them.
Yeah.
And so after about 4 years, there were 3 different Webtools businesses. One was focusing on the energy sector, both New Zealand and Australia. We had 1 product, 2 when you count Australia and New Zealand. We had 1 major product, and we were bloody good at it. We understood their challenges, and every time there was a regulatory change or something happened in the industry, we'd straight on it. We'd fix, we'd release a new version of the software, enhancements, everything else. That was 1 team. The other area we saw an opportunity in was health.
Yeah.
Right? And health tech is, up until a couple of years ago, we were still sending faxes to pharmacies to fill prescriptions, right?
Yeah.
And that there are a lot of systems that are used in health. Often they don't talk to each other. They have, not very nice interfaces. They're very clunky. People are used to using, Uber and some, Airbnb, which are really nice to look at, and it's kind of, hey, 3 clicks and I've just booked an Uber. It's great. Then they jump into work and they go into the hospital or the GP, whatever, and they'll jump in and, they'll get frustrated. Yep. So we saw an opportunity in that sector. And then the third area we saw a pretty big opportunity was the agri-tech space.
Yeah.
So within about 4 years of kicking off Webtools, there were 3 different Webtools businesses. Yeah. So the business that I exited about 3 years ago was the energy business. Yeah. And that was, we were acquired by an organisation that had software in the energy sector already. Mm-hmm. And it was quite funny actually how we sort of came across them. We were bidding on building a whole lot of custom software for a bunch of energy retailers, and we had such a great reputation in the market that we were beating everybody. Yeah, right. And I got a call one day from this organisation, and they said, "Well, you've got to stop beating us. Like we are, and we're trying to. How about we have a chat about acquiring you?" Yeah. And so that's where that conversation kind of came from. So our reputation was gold. Yeah, it was brilliant. We had some great tech. We had some great customers. We're out there beating a lot of the bigger guys. Yeah, sure. That couldn't compete.
When you started out, were you thinking exit, or were you just like, I just want to build cool software? And
No, and I was challenged on this a lot. I had a board that was an advisory board, which was very kindly paid for by Canterbury Development Corporation or Christchurch NZ. Cool. And it was part of an accelerator program which we were very successful in, and we applied for, and we were successful in getting some funding. So I had some amazing minds around the table every month for a year. Yeah. And I was so deep in the weeds of, look, I've got to fly to Auckland and get a contract signed, and I've got to chat to these people about this new tech, right? So I was in every part of the business. Awesome. And they were constantly challenging me. Two things. One, get out of the business, get on it, right? Just, you're playing coach now. You're not Richie McCaw anymore.
Yeah.
You are, you're Steve Hansen, right?
You're in the box. Yeah.
Exactly right. So get off the field.
Yeah.
I like muddy knees, right? So I like being out there playing.
Yeah.
And the second thing is that where is this all going? Is this a job for life? Are you going to exit? And I you know what? That's the last thing I sort of thought about. I was so far deep in the weeds, and my knees were so muddy that I couldn't even think about the World Cup that was happening in 4 years' time. I was too busy wanting to pass the ball to my mate.
Yeah.
And that was absolutely the focus. So having that in the back of your mind is very important, and it's something that I didn't have at all while I was developing the business.
Yeah, right. That's because I kind of joke about this with people that knew me at this time, and also with myself almost at points. But I had this I just plucked $5 million out of the air when I started Digital Simple, and I was like, 5 years, I'm going to build a company, I'm going to sell it for $5 million,
Well
and then I'm going to go to Mykonos and drink mojitos, and that was pretty much it. And it was to the point where I'd told my mum she was coming. As a bit of an ongoing joke, my watch has a second time zone and it's set to Mykonos time.
Perfect.
Just as like, because, but it is funny how that's probably too far in the thinking ahead basket, because when you're 21 and you're starting a company, the concept of 5 years seems like an extraordinarily long period of time. And then you run the business for 6 years and you go, I probably still will sell this thing at some point in time, but it might be another 10 years away from now, because the big thing that matters, and this is what you pointed out, is that you have to be exceptionally good, have an extremely strong reputation, have all of those sorts of things for it to really become an asset anyway.
Yes.
It can't be you with muddy knees and they're bashing out and being really good. That's not really an asset. It's sort of just like a reasonable income for someone who works really hard.
I absolutely agree with you. I think your reputation, and certainly for me, the reputation was really important. I hate doing a bad job. And I'm any time that I think that we might have made a mistake, I'm on a plane, I'm up, take my hat off and say, I'm really sorry, we're going to fix this for you. And that was really important. And that was one of the bits of feedback, as part of this due diligence process, which took about 6 months of this organisation that said that they were going to buy us. And they said, great, here's an offer. I said, that looks attractive. Let's have a chat. And they said, look, we're just going to go through and just check your books and have some conversations with some of your clients. They did a round of feedback, and they rang every single one of our clients, and they said, look, what's the best thing about the business? Like, why did you go with them? And they said, look, Brett's up here all the time. He's engaged. He understands the industry. He listens to us, and so every single one of our clients, except one, every single one of our clients gave me a 10 out of 10. Like a rating. They actually said, out of 10, what would you give it? 10.
Yeah, right.
But one client gave me an 8.
It's still not that bad.
I know. I'm like, 8 out of 10. I'm probably right with that. But tell me about the 2. What did I do wrong? And I was, and that really got to me. I'm like, bastards gave me an 8. Like, you get 80% on an exam at university. Like, you'd be fucking punching the air, right? And so reputation is so important. And so as a result of that, it actually backfired on me. I was initially required to stay part of the business for a year as part of the handover after they bought it. And they came back and they said, shit, actually, can we get 2? We can't have you leave. Within a year, because there's so much stuff to do and your reputation is so important. And we've got other plans for you. And so when this organisation, Agility, purchased the Webtools business, we became part of that organisation. And so I was out talking to a lot of their clients, selling other software, chatting away. So some really cool client engagement pieces, which were not Webtools, right? They basically bought 3 or 4 different businesses together, private equity firm, and the idea was to create this one-stop shop for an energy retailer. They can get a website, they can get a billing system, they can get a sales onboarding solution, they can get all of this stuff all in one place, and fully integrated across the whole piece. And so that was the intent. Yeah, cool. Was there ever and obviously we could probably spend 3 hours talking about the challenges and the early stages of building the business, and they're probably worth touching on, but was there ever a point for you where you went, I might be onto something here? Because obviously you're
floundering around a bit at the start, I'd assume, unless you had like a magic ball where you could see the future or something. Was there ever a moment where you went, like I had this, I remember, and they're always weird. They never actually align with what you would think these moments are for me. But I just at one point in time last year walked in here and I saw all these people and this office and all this stuff, and I was like, fuck. Like, because your knees are so muddy while you're building
100%,
it.
Yeah.
Did you have did you have a number of, or was there anything that?
I think I did know that we were onto something special. I mean, culture is really important within the organisations that I run, and having the right people, having the right attitude is really important.
Yeah.
Being very supportive. I mean, look, at the end of the day, we're all human beings. We all make mistakes. We all, nobody comes to work to do a bad job.
Yeah.
So treating people with a lot of respect was really, really important. And I think I had probably a very similar moment to you when I walked in to the organisation and everyone's just doing stuff. And I think the one kicker for me was that I used to have control. When I say control, I used to know everything that was going on in the organisation, everything that was going on in the business. And at one point I walked in and I was like, I actually don't know what that guy's doing. But I'm okay with that, right? And that's when I started to kind of jump up above the business a little and to get to a point where I was like, actually, this thing's running. I've set the frameworks in place. We've got rules and processes and expectations and culture and all of that stuff is kind of all done. And this thing's just running itself and it is great. And you get to a point where you think, okay, you do. You walk in and you go, fuck, I've built this community of people, right?
Yeah.
But similar to you, I was the only shareholder, right? It was all on my shoulders.
Yeah.
And man, you talk about mistakes at the beginning, not necessarily mistakes, but just battles, right? Customers paying late.
Yeah.
Let's get that contract signed. Oh, Johnny's away for 2 weeks. He's on holiday. We'll do it later. And you're like, oh, how am I going to do payroll?
Yeah.
Credit cards coming out. The important thing is that you walk into the office every day with a brave face because you know that it's going to be fine.
Yeah.
It is, and that's probably one thing that I wish I had said to myself. Well, the one thing that I would say to myself as a younger person is that everything is going to be okay.
Yes.
Because I never thought it was, right? You always you fear the worst, you expect the best, but you fear the worst, right? And you think, what if that customer doesn't pay this month? What if that contract doesn't get signed? What if that person that I just hired turns out to be a complete dropkick and now I have to go through and try and get rid of them and what am I going to do? And you're constantly worrying about that stuff and it's all on your shoulders.
Yeah.
And I think having that responsibility is very humbling. It's really important that people rely on you. But it really gets to you sometimes. And there are occasions where the credit card came out for payroll. But it was all for the right reasons because you know that next month you were going to be fine.
Yeah.
And so, that's probably the number one takeaway is if I could, I'd go back to myself 10 years ago and say, everything's going to be all right.
Yeah,
You're
nice.
good. And as long as you make good decisions along the way, you're good.
Yeah. I mean, I'd imagine that as we go through and we film more of these podcasts and more of these conversations happen, there'll be a real trend around that, whatever it takes kind of, like I bought my first house in, it would have been 2020, maybe 2021, and sold it and wired all the money across to the company and torched it because we were going through a hard time. And I was like, it's just what it is. And it's really funny because at the same time, all of the people that I knew were buying houses and it was like almost a part of their personality, right? Like they were so proud about buying this house and they had so much passion about it. Whereas my whole thing was I'd bought it and I was really excited about the process of being a homeowner, but that meant 1% to me and the company health meant 99%. And as you mentioned, like you go through, there'll be no one that will come in here and talk that won't have had extreme difficulty along the way.
Totally agree.
I think the one thing that I see with the people that have the cool stories to tell versus that don't really have a story to tell is that the company and what you're building is the thing that takes priority over everything else. Credit cards, whatever it is, you just got to do what you got to do. And then within that, your company includes your clients, but it also includes your staff, and they need to know that you'll do whatever it takes to keep them fed. And
they're all trusting you.
Yeah.
And it's just you as well. But no, I think it's for anyone starting out. I think there's probably a couple of lessons, and like I said right at the start, for every success there's a dozen failures.
Yeah.
And I've had a dozen failures. We got an example. I kicked off a business which developed an IoT device, Internet of Things, right?
Yeah.
And it had every sensor you could possibly want under the sun. It had 5 years worth of battery life. You could stick it on anywhere. It would have GPS. It knew whether it was lying down or standing up. It knew which way it was pointing. It knew how hot it was. It knew what the humidity was. Everything. I probably burnt a couple $100,000 on that.
Yeah.
And we developed this solution and had it made, like the circuit boards and everything. The stuff that I learned during that journey, that 2-year journey, was just incredible. I had no idea about any of this stuff. And what nailed it for me, and where I knew the nail was in the coffin, was after we developed this device, we deployed a whole bunch of them and chatting with a whole bunch of clients and bits and pieces. 6 months later, I could buy the same device, not ours, but the same functionality on AliExpress for $50.
Yeah, right.
And I'm like, shit.
Yeah.
It makes you think. And so one of the mistakes that we made was that we were developing a product, right? And that was the business, was we were going to make this really cool gadget. That's not the business. The business was that we were solving problems for people.
Yeah.
And that could be, where's my stuff, right? So it could be an expensive piece of hire equipment.
Yeah.
You could stick a GPS tracker on the side of it, and the hiring manager of the hire pool or whatever it is comes to work and gets to 5 o'clock and go, where's that digger? Click, it's over there, right? So we were solving problems for people. And what we should have been focusing on is using a whole bunch of different tools to focus to solve problems for people.
Yeah.
As opposed to, we're going to build a really cool gadget and then try and sell it.
Yeah.
And so you learn a lot along the way. There's plenty of failures.
Yeah, right. Yeah. It's just, I think it's just like, it's good for you, right? I was talking about, we've obviously got a newborn at home, and I was talking with Jen about this yesterday, and we're both a little stretched, we're a little bit sleep deprived and stuff like that. And I was like, the funny thing about these challenging moments is, I don't know what it's like with newborns, but I know with every other challenging moment I've had in my life up until this point, is that at the time it sucks, and then you look back on it really fondly, and you don't miss the money, because we've torched a lot of money in a lot of places, and you don't miss, I mean, you obviously don't miss the pain that comes with it, but you almost do in a weird sense. You're kind of like, these are the moments, that I'm sitting at the kitchen bench typing, not knowing how I'm going to pay rent next week when we were starting up. Like, I liked that. The knocking on doors, all that walking around in the rain, getting told to fuck off about 50 times a day.
Yeah,
like,
absolutely.
you look back on that, like, that was cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It is. And it is. It's super important. I mean, as human beings, we need to go through hard times, right? And so we're not talking setting yourself up to fail. We're talking about challenging yourself on a daily basis, doing things, turning around in a supermarket queue and having a chat with the person behind you, getting on a plane, flying up and knocking on the door of a client that you've always wanted and saying, hey, mate, I'm in Auckland, let's go and get a coffee, or can I buy you some lunch? Taking those risks, putting yourself in uncomfortable positions, because that's where you learn. We'll also talk about one thing that I do with I've got 3 daughters, by the way, and the one thing I do with them is I take them on an outward bound.
Yeah.
And so 8 days at a Kiwa, top of the South Island, and we're just together, we're put through just incredible challenges.
Yeah.
And it is, when I talk about challenges, I'm not talking about, getting up a little early and going for a run. I'm talking about, 45 minutes of PT session at 5:30 in the morning, followed by a swim in the ocean. This is all, we've done it a couple of times now. I think in October, the ocean is freezing cold.
Yeah.
Getting out of there, no hot showers, and then straight, and then packs on, and then walking for 22 kilometres. Like, we're talking, people are breaking down at this point.
Yeah.
And one of the things that we learn in that is we talk about the difference between type 1 and type 2 fun.
Yeah.
Right? So type 1 fun is having a bag of lollies and going, whoa, this is brilliant, right? It's on the dance floor and doing other stuff. You're having fun at the moment.
Yeah.
Type 2 fun is running a marathon, and you're like, you're in it and you hate it, and you're like, why did I sign up for this stupid thing? My legs are sore, I got blisters and stuff.
Yeah.
You look back 2 weeks later and you go, fuck, that was cool.
Yeah, I love that shit. And it's been something, once again, like, I'm drawn towards comfort. My dream scenario is sit at home for a week, or only eat Uber Eats, don't talk to any people, that sort of thing. But the marathons, the physical challenges, the things like that I've done, they actually shape you. Like, that's what I found is I'd spent 26 years of my life saying I'm not a runner. Like, I'm not a runner, I'm not a runner, I'm not a runner, I'm not a runner.
Yep.
And then, and I'm lucky, I've got some friends that like to challenge me, and I like to challenge them too. And one of them was just like, I could do a marathon.
Yep.
And I was like, same. And he's like, no, you couldn't.
Yeah.
And I was like, yeah, I could.
Yeah, perfect.
And then also approaching situations like that, not like, I'll just check this off, but being like, okay, how fast could I run a marathon? And that was and like shifting that model and then being like, right, okay, so what would the framework behind running a marathon quickly be? Yep. And so I got a running coach, I did everything. I set a goal of doing the marathon in 3 hours 30, and I wound up at 3:36, which still haunts me. 6 minutes, but it's good to have that.
Do it again.
Know? Yeah.
Do it again, mate.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So I think that type 1, type 2 fun, there's a real difference between pleasure and happiness.
Yeah.
Pleasure is a bag of lollies.
Yeah.
Getting on the beer with your mates and don't get me wrong, that's fantastic. The type 2 fun, long term, drives happiness.
Yeah.
These are those challenges that we do. These are the times that we get out of bed, we go for a run, we do a marathon, and it bloody hurts, and 2 weeks later we're really proud of ourselves.
Yeah.
That's what drives happiness. So, the problem these days, and I'm sounding old, right, is that we're in for immediate gratitude all the time, right?
Yeah.
This, social media is just giving us all of that, right? And that's great. That's immediate gratitude. This type 2 stuff is the challenging, and like you said, that actually builds the person, it builds your character.
Yeah.
Right. So the more type 2 you have, happier you are, and the better person you are.
I saw something online the other day, which was the idea that discipline was the best form of self-love. And I was like, that's a really interesting way to think about it, because people think about like self-love stuff as being like sitting on the couch and relaxing or whatever, but it's actually getting in the cold water or going to the gym or going for the run.
Yep.
That's how you care for yourself properly.
Yep.
Yeah, cool. Okay. You've actually, funnily enough, I took all these questions down to ask you, and I've been sort of keeping an eye on them as we've been going through, and you've pretty much covered everything, which I sort of thought would happen anyway.
Perfect, yeah.
Probably the one thing I'd just love to know your thoughts on, someone has a business, they've now listened to this and decided, I would like to exit at some point. Mm-hmm. What's the one thing, if there was one piece of advice that you could give them that they need to consider while they go through the process of preparing this company, which will obviously take some time, what's the one thing that you think you did best through your exit process, or the one thing you learned through it as well?
Difficult for one thing, I think.
Yeah.
There's probably a bit of advice that I got when I first started the business, and that is that you always be ready for sale.
Yeah.
At any point in time. And I can't stress that enough. If at any time someone can come and knock on your door and say, I like what you're doing, I'd like to buy your business.
Yeah.
The last thing you want is unsigned contracts, debt in the business that's not structured in the right way. This just, spreadsheets instead of using something like Xero.
Yeah.
You want to make it easy for someone to buy your business.
Yeah,
and
cool.
you should always have that in the back of your mind in everything you do. And it's always easy just to go, just get another customer on board. I don't worry about that contract. But you know what? Any buyer that's going to come in is going to want to see that contract, and it's going to have to be signed. Yeah. And the particularly around contracts is let them have rollover clauses in them. Yeah. Because there was one example in my business where we had a contract with a big retailer that had not been signed for a couple of years, and I thought it had. And so we were able to get it signed. It was fine. It was just a complete oversight. The person we were working with left the company, and I was like, I'm pretty sure there's just a roll. There wasn't. So put rollover clauses in all your contracts and say, look, unless you terminate, we're just going to assume you're going to carry on. Yeah. And then we're good. Yeah. And then if you do forget down the track, at least you know you're covered. You've got that rollover clause, and then it's just going to keep going until somebody says no. So I think always be ready for sale. Is really important. That's just making sure you've got a nice tidy house. Think about like somebody's coming over. Any time a visitor can come over. Yeah. Tidy a house. Yeah. Make it look nice.
Vacuum your carpet.
Yeah, absolutely.
What would you, if you were to start again from scratch, what would the biggest thing that you would do this time round that's different to the first time be?
Holy moly, yeah.
So I'm trying to ask the heavy hitting ones towards the end here.
That is a really good question. And look, I mean, I've just recently started over which launched a new AI business. Yeah. Centered around sort of helping businesses understand, navigate AI. Yeah. a lot of people, and I'm guilty of this as well, and a lot of the organisations that I provide advice to are also guilty of this, is that people do the easy stuff first.
Yeah.
And let me give you an example. I caught up with a mate the other day. He's like, I've launched a business. I've got this new business. I'm like, oh, mate, that's epic. He's like, oh, so good. It's got a website done.
Yeah.
It cost me 10 grand. Got some real cool business cards. Check out my cool business cards. You know, they were like 2 grand to get those designed and get them all printed off, and they got real nice stuff on them. I've got got a logo done. You know, that was really good as well. Think about getting some t-shirts printed. And I'm like, that's great. That's not a business. You've just spent 20 grand on, and this is the difficult thing, is that he's a mate, and I'm like, mate, good on you, pat on the back.
Yeah.
If I was advising him, I'd like, mate, that's the easy stuff. You've spent 20 grand on stuff that you didn't need to do.
Yeah.
First thing you need to be doing is selling, right?
Yeah.
And you know what? We have this saying in software, which is hit the road before you code.
Yeah.
If you've got an idea, you don't go and build it.
Yeah.
You go and hit the road. And dare I say it, and I'm going to be crucified saying it, fake it until you make it. And what I mean by that is that get a prototype up and running. Think about all of those new features that you need in there. Don't write any code.
Yeah.
Create a beautiful working prototype and go out and have as many conversations as you possibly can to try and sell it. Yeah. And you're not being deceitful. What you're saying is that I'm thinking about building this, James, and it's going to be fantastic. You're going to love it. Here's what it's going to look like. It's going to do all these cool things. Would you buy it? Not, do you want to buy it now, but would you buy it? And listen, because you'll be surprised at the feedback you'll get. It might be, hey, look, this is great, but it's too expensive. Yeah. We've already got something that does all this. Or I spoke to Johnny yesterday, and he's developing the same thing. You'll get so much insight from those to-be customers, those pending customers, that, you know, at some point you might say, well, actually, there's no business here.
Yeah, right.
Or you might get feedback, which is like, this is great. Brett, give me a call the day that you get this thing up and running, and I will sign a contract. I think this is great. Good luck to you. That's great. You know, here's a commitment. Whatever that is, it could be an MOU, it could be an email or something, right? And so that's how I would do it differently.
There's and I may butcher this story a little bit, but there's one like this that I saw, and everyone was laughing about it, and I was like, this is one of the most brilliant things I've ever seen, which was, I believe it was Amazon. This is the part that I made butcher, but they essentially had created a series of stores where you could just walk in, grab products, walk out, and then your card would just be charged, right?
Perfect. Yep.
And so you would assume with Amazon, right, that they've gone and created this super hyper intelligent thing that uses cameras, and turns out they just had a team of people in either India or the Philippines, I believe it was India, just watching people go around the stores and then just adding things into a list and then just billing them afterwards. And so the whole market was like, what a cheap out, bad way of executing, blah, blah, blah. And I saw that and I was like, there's a lesson in that everyone needs, which is like, prove the product before going and spending all the money on the development. And then they disestablished it didn't work. And it probably cost them 1% or 2% of what it would have if they'd gone and built it out.
So speed to market and then testing. Right? And so speed to market is important, because if I came up with a software idea, I'm 6 to 12 months away from building it. Right? If I've got an idea today, I would prototype it. What's it going to take me? A week? And then I would go and have 50 conversations. What's it going to take me? Probably 2 or 3 weeks, maybe a month. Call it a month. So within a month, I've got a prototype and I've had 50 conversations with prospective customers. I haven't spent anything apart from time. And at the end of that month, I'm going to know whether I've got a business or not. And at that point, I go, I need a website. I need some t-shirts. You know, I need a logo done. And I can go and spend my 20 grand, but I'm confident that I'll do that. Don't do the easy stuff. Do the hard stuff first. Sell on your first day. I'm old enough to know about internet banking and the launch of internet banking here in New Zealand. And exactly the same thing happened back then, which was that, you know, we had this amazing concept where you could log in and you could pay, you know, your mate online. This was great. This was perfect. And there was a few banks in New Zealand that launched that very, very early on. And the idea or the concept was that this thing was all automated and it was amazing, and I could put this thing in and overnight the money would appear in someone else's account. I was like, this is cool. Don't have to go to a bank. And it was all bollocks. It was people in the background at night time going, oh, Brett wants to pay $20 to his mate. Sweet, type it all in, transfer the money over, happy days. But from my perspective, I thought it was the best thing ever.
So much better. So much better. What's next for you?
Great question. The big focus for me at the moment is the Webtools Health business.
Yeah.
That is a business which is growing probably I won't say quicker, but it's just growing incredibly fast.
Yep.
And so what I do is I provide guidance to Harry, who runs it, and just to make sure that we've got our priorities right.
Yep.
There are so many opportunities in the health sector. And you're like a kid in a candy store, right? And you're like, oh, do we chase that? Oh, what about over here? And remaining focused, right? Focused on what we're good at, focused on the products that we have available in the market. We've got probably a dozen products that we have the rights for and that we can license, right?
Yeah.
And so rather than create a product category of 20 or 30 different products,
Right.
Let's focus on the 12 that we've got and we're incredibly good at. We've got great customers on them. Let's look at growing those sorts of things. So that's the focus for me. So I'm helping quite a few different organisations at the moment, sort of providing them with some guidance. Tech companies,
Yeah.
right? I'm a bit brutal and I'm a bit honest.
Yeah.
And I think that's just the way that I would like my feedback. And very early on when I started the Webtools business, I'd chat to my mates and say, oh, look, I've got this idea, I'm thinking about doing this thing. Like, oh, great, that's so cool, good on you should definitely do it, so proud of you. And that's really cool. Actually, that's the worst bit of feedback that you want. What you want is someone to go, mate, you're fucking dreaming, stop, go and do this other thing first. Like, seriously, don't waste your money, don't waste your time, you've got a mouth to feed, don't quit your job. Let's do it on the weekends.
Yeah.
That sort of stuff. So that's the kind of advice that I'm sort of providing a lot of startups these days.
Yeah, cool. It's you can just see, and you may not realize this when you speak, but you can just see that that you mentioned having muddy knees, and you can see that and the impact on the way that you think about things.
Yep.
I think about it a lot when I think about who I was when I started Digital Simple versus who I am now, and getting your knees dirty shapes the way you view the world so massively.
Absolutely.
It's really cool. If someone watches this and they go, Brett, I want to work with you at this capacity or whatever it is, how do they keep up with you? How do they contact you? What's the play?
Again, I'm a bit old school, mate. I'm a bit of a dark horse on social media.
Yeah.
I like consuming a little bit of content, but not really posting a lot of content.
Yeah.
Look, do I have a landline? No.
Yeah.
I'm not that old school.
Not write your letter? No.
yeah. Send me a postcard. Drop me a line. No, absolutely. So pretty heavily involved with the Webtools business. So Brett at Webtools. Yeah. .co.nz, nice easy one. I'm all over LinkedIn. I think that's probably the best thing. I enjoy challenges. I enjoy people coming to me with really clearly framed up problems. Yeah. Brett, we've got this amazing product, and we're really struggling to make any headroads into a particular industry. Let's go have some chats. Yeah. And so a lot of my challenges to people is just kind of have conversations. Yeah. It's just, we're sitting around this table, we're guessing why Billy's not buying it. Yeah. Billy's got no money. Billy hasn't got authority to buy it. Billy doesn't think your stuff's any good. Billy's already got something which is better than what you're trying to... You're guessing. Yeah. All right? Let's go and have a chat with Billy. Let's go and take him out for a beer. Right? Yeah. We'll sit down. And a lot of these issues that businesses have can be put to bed or answered by just going to have discussions, right? Yeah, nice. Go and have 50 discussions, and you'll be surprised what you learn. You learn a lot about yourself. But a lot of people will sit quite insular and create a product and then go, why is no one buying it? Yeah. Well, what did they say? Did he have a chat with them? Oh, they said no. And I'm like, great. Did they say why? Well, no, because I got really upset that they said no. So I kind of left it. And I'm like, hey, just get back on the phone. I was like, not here to sell you anything. Really just want to know why you don't want to buy my stuff. Yeah. Too expensive. Oh, that's great. Yeah. That's cool. You get that feedback. You put it into your CRM, and 27% of the people think you're too expensive. But actually 40% of the people think you're a right price. Maybe that's not your market. Yep. Look at segmenting your market, right? These people don't have enough money for your stuff. These people do. Focus on them. Yeah. You learn a lot. Yeah. Cool. There's a lot of stuff in that for me. Is this your first podcast you've done? It is actually, mate.
You smashed it.
Well, apart from the one that you and I were in a sauna about
Oh, yeah,
6
that's
months
right.
ago.
That was good fun. This is the first one under the spotlight, though.
Oh, absolutely it is. Absolutely it is. Yeah. No, it is, mate. So no, I appreciate you reaching out. And,
I couldn't be more appreciative of you coming on. It's been awesome, and I think that I'm taking stuff away from it, so I'm sure that that listeners will very much feel the same. Thanks for being a practitioner. It's a refreshing view on things, I think, for the general market, where everything else is about cheating the game and winning fast and stuff like that. I think that the dirty knees, tackling stuff, being real about how it works, doing the hard things that are simple and right in front of you rather than cheating it is really cool. So, mate, thank you so much for coming on. I really appreciate it.
Really appreciate it.
Cheers. Thank you.